Welcome to Burn the Ship. This is the podcast where we connect entrepreneurs or professionals that can help you go all in on your business. We talk to people that have walked the walk, talked the talk, been through all the things that we experience in the small business world, and joined us on Burn the Ship to share some of those skills and experience with us so that we can run our businesses more effectively. So first of all, thank you for being here. It's very kind of you, sharing some time with me, sharing some time with the audience. It's very kind. It's something that not a lot of people are willing to do is share some time with people that are looking to learn and get better and all of those things. So thank you very much, first of all, and thank you for joining Burn the Ship and joining our little podcast family here. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Likewise, thank you for having me out. My name is Patrick Gorgen. I'm based out of St. Louis, Missouri, running DevPort Studio, and we are a web design and development agency focusing on everything from building custom websites, e-commerce, to mobile apps and software as well. So, appreciate you having me out, Bailey.
Yep, anytime. Tell me a story. How did you get into this technology space? And then talk to me about kind of transitioning your skills into the business world.
Yeah, so it was a roundabout way of starting the agency. So I've always had a sales background. Started off in mortgage origination, and then moved out to Los Angeles shortly after graduating from Mizzou, and which is in Columbia, Missouri. And that move made me, for some reason, I just latched onto the idea of getting into tech sales. So then started going down the traditional SaaS sales route. Worked at a couple different companies and really cut my teeth on learning about different technologies, having to navigate those conversations, really getting in over my head with talking to people that knew way more about what I was trying to sell them than I even knew. So that, I feel like, accelerated my learning. And then let's see, the last SaaS company I was working for ended up getting acquired. So salespeople were the first to get cut. Moved into a kind of parallel space in market research. And that's where it kind of opened my eyes to being more like consultative and really kind of helping people like take a step back, understanding who they're trying to talk to and how we're going to get there. So ended up moving back to my hometown of St. Louis and was able to take kind of those two paths that I had walked on before, and ended up founding the agency by way of building a failed Shopify app. It was about 2021. And I just heard a lot about live stream shopping. I thought the space was interesting. It was very popular in China, which I learned the hard way is a very different shopping market. Just obviously a huge population, very fast paced, just a way different world. And so I, again, found out the hard way that building a live stream shopping app for Shopify at that time didn't mean that everybody's just going to jump on board. And as a bootstrap solo founder, I was a little bit overwhelmed with all the costs adding up, the server costs, the live streaming costs, etc. So after building that app, the team that I worked with, who was headed by now my CTO, his name is Z. We actually came back together about 3-4 months after the fact and just kind of like we're catching up. And the conversation came up about going into business together and kind of formalizing more of a web development agency. And it didn't take too much convincing before, I quit my job and went all in on this agency. Like things I'd always kind of tinkered on ideas and, being in sales one-to-one, I didn't really, honestly, it's kind of crazy to think about. I didn't really understand marketing enough to really like reach a large audience and get out there. In my 20s, looking back, I really wish I had because, who knows what the possibilities could have been. But nonetheless, that's what brought me here today. And we just crossed the 4-year mark on the agency with plenty more experience behind us. Because again, we kind of have a unique founding story in that Z and the team were already in place, and we kind of joined our forces and use that symmetry to grow the business.
Sure. I love what you said about marketing. And I think that the space that you're in right now it's even more important to have that understanding. And the reason is because something I experience in my business is that being the liaison between technology in real life is very, very important. Like being able to articulate to these business owners and people that you're working with the value of the undertaking that they are going through is incredibly important. It's not enough to be able to speak all the tech languages and prove to people that you know an understanding of the technology well enough to make it make sense for their business. And it's additionally not enough to understand the sales and marketing cycle so much that you can explain the difference that you can make in people's businesses without being able to show them and speak enough of the technology to give people some comfort that you know what you're doing. So talk to
Yeah,
me a little bit
absolutely.
about the verbiage that happens in between there and how important that is for you to be able to demonstrate to people that you're making a sound investment.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, actually timely because I was in a meeting earlier this morning where a lot of that kind of navigation of understanding what this small business was going through while also trying to navigate like should they get into e-commerce and everything that meant for them is really where we spent a lot of the time. It wasn't so much about like you said you wanted to build this e-commerce store, this is how we can do it, these are the features, this is the time cost, etc., just like kind of running through a brick wall. It was really like take a step back and understand, I think really because of what I just shared with you about building that app and didn't have anybody to to sell it to, that I'm really cautious now when I hear somebody talk about like entering into a new technical space for them in their business. So to navigate that verbiage and whatnot, what I like to do is really understand, kind of like start at the end and then work our way backwards. So, where I took that specific conversation was, what is the goal? Why go from kind of your situation you have now, your setup, not running an e-commerce store, to wanting to get more into direct to consumer and have that online presence. How much time, how much money are you willing to invest in that? The phrase, which I really appreciated, the phrase, like, we're not sure if we build it, will they just automatically come to the store? And I was just like, I can tell you, they most likely will not. Now it was a unique situation and one that I was happy to kind of be able to uncover because they actually have really great in real life relationships. So I was like, you're starting at a unique advantage because you're not just like thinking of this kind of moonshot like shower idea that you're like, oh, I should try to figure out how to bring this to market and Shopify makes it so easy, et cetera, et cetera. It was more of how can we tap into what you've already got going and use this online presence and e-commerce store to kind of bolster and amplify your in-person sales and all the hard work that you put in traveling on the road to make those relationships. So in short, I think it's really valuable to really listen to what, if you're in a sales environment or trying to get a customer, you really got to listen to what they're saying and be able to get off the talk track. Because I could have talked all day about the ins and outs of Shopify, BigCommerce, etc. But I don't think that would have had the same value as really understanding kind of like the story, the where the person was coming from, and like the why behind what they were starting to look at. So to me, that's everything. Is hearing them, really actively listening, and then that makes it easier to kind of navigate that verbiage, the technical scope and whatnot, and just kind of democratize it for somebody who's not as familiar with the space.
Sure. I would add on to that and say that something that I see happening with startup and SaaS companies in the technology space is that without a clear understanding of your client and who is going to be visiting your store or utilizing your service, what tends to happen, especially with seeded companies, is that you raise money and you've built a product and then you get a client or two and you fall into this, like what I call the features and benefits hurricane, where you're constantly building to keep up with the needs of one client without a clear understanding of your ideal client. I
Yeah,
think that
absolutely.
it's very easy when you bypass some of the things that you were talking about with giving an understanding of the impact and the workload that it's going to give to businesses, is that they say, okay, let's do it. Let's invest in the technology. And then you get this like sunken cost fallacy where you're like, oh, I've gone so far now, we just have to build a little more. We have to build a little more. We have to build a little more. So if you're listening and you're
Yeah.
thinking about investing in technology for your business, and that isn't what you want to do, which is, create this bottomless sinkhole of technology that you can sink money into, you really have to have that conversation. You have to have that conversation of, what does the sales look like? What does the revenue generating opportunity look like? What is the opportunity cost if we don't invest in the technology right now? Because those are real things. They're real data points. And I would encourage you, especially if you're someone like the client that you were discussing earlier, where you've kind of have this built-in audience, like you already have these relationships with potential customers out there in the world, that it's something that you should explore. But you should only explore it if it's what you're willing to understand that client and provide one thing for those people that is very, very clear.
Yeah.
Don't go into building features and benefits and all of these different things that you can just build endlessly because someone says they need it. Someone says it's going to be the difference maker. That's not always true, and maybe it's true for that one person, but still maybe it's not enough for you. But it does matter. But what would you guys say is kind of your superpower? What is the thing that you guys have done very, very well since the beginning that has helped you grow your business to where it is today?
That's a great question. So I've got two different answers to that. Point blank, from the business standpoint of our expertise and kind of what we're delivering on, our superpower is our ability to get in, understand kind of the task at hand, and then really just confirm or deny if we can handle this. And as soon as that confirmation is greenlit, we're off and running, and we really pride ourselves on speed. For more context, we'll do custom projects and kind of end like A to Z, start to finish, really think about strategy, branding, etc. But as being the business owner and kind of like overseeing the operations, I am kind of looking at like, how can we make this a more well-run machine, which is passed on, those benefits are passed on to our clients. And so that has looked like getting more into developer augmentation. And so this kind of ties back into what I was going with speed. With developer augmentation, a lot of the conversations we're getting into is somebody is kind of weighing their options. One, they're strapped for resources, so maybe their feature list is kind of getting bottlenecked and things are piling up. Maybe they do have clients that they've fleshed out and need to actually build something for. Because I agree with you, like really understand, is this going to be the right move for our ICP? So we are kind of playing in that space for a lot of our customers recently of, should they hire a freelancer, full-time employee, or kind of get somebody to bridge that gap? When that fits and they do want to bridge the gap with our services, I really pride ourselves on speed, because they've probably found themselves in this position and are looking to hire because of getting bottlenecks and being slowed down. So that is our technical expertise and kind of superpower, is knowing what we're experts in and be able to really get after it quickly to start. And then also priding ourselves on like following through on our word and not quitting until we deliver on that promise. So if we say that, this feature is going to be shipped by, XYZ date, then we are going to make sure that we pull in our team and deliver on that, whether it's overtime, people work on the weekend. Obviously, we work that out amongst ourselves with our team, but we do, pride ourselves on kind of coming through on that. And then personally, I think what I have really learned over the years and kind of leaned into is the active listening part, because as often as people say that, I think when you really put that into practice, that will only make your kind of like sales efforts, your follow up, and the rest of the process that much more smoothly for you, as well as beneficial for the prospect or client, of really understanding their pain points, what they're looking for, and can you deliver on it or not. I think I've been in sales environments where you've got those people that I used to kind of admire, where it seemed like they would run through a brick wall like this. They just did not stop talking. They would not take no for an answer. but then you could also like, if you heard the person on the other end of the line, they're just like, okay, fine, like we'll do the demo. But it was almost kind of like a reluctance,
Right.
So I think, though, when I was in my younger 20s, I was like, oh, I should probably take something away from that. Now I'm kind of like, no, I'm going to lean into my strengths. And I think that's really active listening.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think that there's so much predication on getting the yes that
Yeah.
what happens after the yes is so important.
Hmm.
Like you have to be able to deliver on the things that happen after the yes, or you didn't really do a deal. Like the credit card processing is the perfect example. I can get a yes, I can get a signed application, I can go through the underwriting process, I can do everything. But I have to talk implementations with my client. How do we make this change? How do we make it easy for everybody? Because until you start swiping with us, we don't get paid. Like
Sure.
we might make $50 on getting your merchant account approved, but that's not what we're here for. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I might sell you a piece of equipment and make $100 or something like that, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to build those relationships that last, that pay us over and over and over again, and without going the last 10% of that process, you've completely defeated all of the effort that you put into the first 90%. Even those percentages seem small. Like going the last 2% is so
Hmm.
important to make the first 98% worthwhile. So that's been a difficult thing for me to learn is making sure that I get that client to the finish line and then push them past it so that we're all in agreement on how we're moving forward. What would you say have been some of those obstacles for you and some of those obstacles for your business, where if you could kind of go back and teach yourself something on day one or give yourself a little bit of advice, what would that be?
That's an interesting question. I was actually thinking about this recently. So two things. One I was just thinking about this morning on my commute, is going from being a salesperson in a larger company. I feel like, I'm sure every place is different, but the culture I was kind of brought up in was kind of like move really fast, um, borderline like say yes to get it done, and then go back to the team and say how do we get this done, which
Right.
is like kind of reckless. So one thing is, and I kind of used to like look at operations and marketing as like, oh man, that looks like a cushy place to be. But
Sure.
now that I'm on the other side of the equation and running the business, I realize how invaluable those two pieces are. So the obstacles of being super process oriented, being like I'm really focusing on becoming like a better operator, which is why we've gotten into the developer augmentation. So that is one component, and then the other is, as a small business, even though it feels like we've been doing this for a while now. I mean, 4 years when you zoom out is not very long at all. So from my perspective, it's easy to try to play like the bottom of the barrel pricing game, especially if you're doing a service. Like you could do a service for free if you're just trading your time, which has its place, frankly. That can help you get up and running with getting reviews and testimonials, especially if you're starting out and you're just like, how do I get any notoriety to even go sell myself for any dollar amount? But once you get past that point, there have been some deals. It's probably in the first half of running this business. It's been a little while now, but where we actually lost the deal simply because we came off too cheap. And I'm talking like, we went in at $30,000 and we were beat out by somebody who offered 75.
Hmm.
I'm like, man, that really stung, because in my mind that was a ton of money to even. I was nervous to even say 30, and then finding out that you're just simply like you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by going in too low. It's in short like knowing your value and kind of knowing, like really taking a step back and looking at the market and kind of what does this client kind of demand in terms of like the quality and the pricing and everything, just to get yourself in that conversation.
Yeah, I can share an anecdote about that as well. I had a client in Orlando one time that I pitched on credit card processing, and they were a huge client for me at the time. And so I wanted to maximize their savings versus what they were doing currently with credit card processing.
Hmm.
And so I whittled myself down to just like what I thought it was at the bare minimum worth to keep the deal and do the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that equated to me saving them like $4,000 a month, like 50K a year was really the number that I threw at them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave my presentation. I thought I did a really, really sound job. And I thought that I was just putting all of my cards on the table for someone to go, oh, this guy's honest and transparent. He wants the best for us and we want to do business with him. And it turns out that they switched to another credit card processor that I had a relationship with, like people that I knew. And I wasn't necessarily upset about it. I mean, there's millions of businesses out there. There's really no point in kind of having a mindset of scarcity in my industry. There's just always more people to talk to. But I
Sure.
lost this deal to another company that they weren't even reaching out to other credit card processors until I made my presentation. And their question was, this 50K a year in savings seems too good to be true. What can you guys do? And they had a nice presentation of some fellas in suits that weren't, 25 at the time, that were
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, we'll save you $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. And that's us really, sharpening our pencil. And they went with those people with the exact same pieces of technology that I was going to implement at a much higher rate. And I genuinely realized at that point, I was making an offer that they equated the price to the value of what I was going to do. And I
Yep.
shot myself in the foot with that deal because I gave away so much that they thought, oh, this guy's hiding something from us. This guy's not telling the truth. And I was telling the truth. You know what I mean? But there is a too good to be true, or an expectation of what something should cost, or an expectation of what investment you should be making for these people. And you have to kind of understand that from a client perspective before you put an offer out there on the table, or you can be losing a deal on day one, which is just revolting to salespeople.
Yep, exactly.
So I can relate to that. But tell me, what, talk to me like new developments, right? Like for the layman, the people that are listening, the people like myself that are, know enough technology to be dangerous, and we get relentlessly marketed it to us on our cell phones in the business world every day. Like, what's new? What's coming from here? What are things that people should look out for, and what's something that we can be excited about?
It's a good question. I mean, man, there's so much new with all the new AI tools and all the different ways that you can go about building a product. I think they are really powerful for going from 0 to 1. So I would recommend that, if you have an idea, you can almost go. What's interesting is we've been kind of talking about like understanding the customer and talking to them before building features and whatnot. If you are starting from scratch, you could almost build something in what might have taken like a few months and thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. You could do that in a weekend now. And then actually, when you're having that conversation, instead of doing it kind of like high level philosophical, like, here's my idea, you can actually just show somebody and be like, this is what it does. It connects these two, pieces of software. Is this useful for you? And you can actually like show instead of just tell. So I think that's really interesting. Fortunately, we are when you've got an existing piece of technology, it's a little bit more involved. So depending on your kind of comfort level with tech, I think I would leverage those tools and encourage anybody that's got an app idea, a website idea, whatever, to try that out. And then, in terms of outside of like the big AI buzz, a lot of it's still the same. For sure, on the development side, it's still best practices that we follow and kind of our processes that we've been, following for the last several years. I think there's an interesting opportunity in AEO. So getting found by the LLMs like the ChatGPTs and Perplexity and Claudes of the world. So kind of some new like marketing arbitrage and opportunities there. But again, if you kind of boil it down and distill out all like the fluff and the buzz, it's still the same old best practices that
Right.
you were trying to appeal to Google with. So it's just new channels are presenting themselves. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing in terms of new developments. I am really interested in specifically getting into Claude Cowork and Code. Again, my background is sales, so I'm not a coder by trade at all.
Me and
So
you
I'm more in
both.
the yeah, I'm more in the co-work space. But then the other one is Replit. I've been kicking the tires on Replit and building some little projects here and there. So those are the two specific pieces of technology that I am most curious about right now.
And so for people that are listening and they want to talk to you because they appreciate your consultative approach to technology involved with their business, how do they find you? And in addition to that, where do you go from here? What are you guys' goals and where are you growing? What are you looking for and all those things? What does the picture look like moving forward?
Yeah, appreciate that. So I am on LinkedIn, pretty active on LinkedIn, trying to get more and more active every day. So Patrick Gorgen, again, my company name is DevPort Studio. And then can also reach me by email, which is pretty public information as well at this point. And happy to share it if you think it's relevant. It's just Patrick at
It was
devportstudio.com.
easy for me to find. I'll tell the audience that. You can find it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're doing any outbound sales efforts, you'll definitely be able to find it.
Yeah, if you've got the knack for finding email addresses on the internet, it's not a hard one to get to, that's for sure.
Exactly. I know. I recently saw that my cell phone was just sitting in like my info on LinkedIn. I was like,
Yeah,
I
it's
should probably
there.
take that off. And then from here, I am. We've got some pretty aggressive revenue goals this year, and that is by way of course, we still have our projects, our kind of full scope projects, if you will. But my specific revenue goal is tied to our developer augmentation and kind of getting into almost like this more staffing model. So it's just a new challenge, different conversations. Certainly means different things for us in terms of running the business and operations and finances. So it's kind of just a new exciting challenge that I am eager to hit our goals, and we're showing up and working every day to kind of build that brick by brick. And I'm confident that we can get there through the approach we're taking. So those are next steps for us. We're just kind of like, we've got some big picture things, but we're just trying to really simplify it every day so that we just make sure that we're checking that box every day and showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you guys are headed for an incredible place, and I had an analogy that I used earlier this week. Like the your friend in the diamond business commercial comes to
Oh yeah,
mind.
Shanko.
Yeah. And when you're making these huge high ticket purchases and investments in your business and you have to see the full picture, like you want a friend in different spaces. And so trying to be the friend in the credit card processing world and the friend in the technology space to bridge that gap between where you are and where you want to be in the technology world is so valuable. I can't emphasize that enough, that navigating these things without the expertise of a professional and the feeling of trusting the people that are talking to you, it's almost impossible. So thank you for presenting yourself and your business and spending some time with us and giving us some insight into what that experience has looked like for you. And for the people listening, I encourage you to find that friend, whether it's my industry or Patrick's industry or whatever it is. Like, find people that you can trust. People still buy from people. I'm a salesperson at heart, and I believe that to be you as well. And building relationships and finding things that people do and that they do well and that they're valuable to your business, and building that relationship is so valuable to you. And I encourage and emphasize everyone that is listening to do more and more of that in 2026. I believe that it strengthens our business ecosystem to a place where, honestly, it can make your business inevitable. Like, it can make your business it going to happen regardless, because you have people in your corner that are willing to take that trip with you. So thank you again. Thank you for coming. This conversation has been incredible. It's very insightful, and I look forward to continuing to grow our relationship and work together in the future. And for all of you guys listening, burn the ship.